recording. Right, wonderful. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We have 1 hour and you're all here because you want to learn more about the Field Tasking Manager, slightly new name to what we've used before. So what we have planned for today is we have 1 hour. We're going to start with welcome. As I was still saying, please add in the chat where you're joining us from, what's your name is, and anything you really don't want to leave this webinar without knowing. Then we're going to jump into the introduction. So I can imagine some of you probably know more about the tasking manager, the Field Tasking Manager than others. So we'll do a bit of a intro, focus on the progress and the latest features, and very quick a few user stories, because that's why we are all working on these tools, right? This is the users, all of you who probably will be using the Field Tasking Manager, and then demos. So then we'll have colleagues doing demo of the tool and time for questions, which is really what I think we're most excited during this webinar. So you'll hear from a few of us actually today. The development work of the Field Tasking Manager is done in collaboration with the HOT tech team and also the team at NACSA, and a lot of also different contributors. So we don't have all the people working on FieldTM on this slide, but those of us presenting today. So you'll hear Rami is the senior product owner. She'll join, but it's not directly presenting. Then we'll hear from Manjita, myself, Petya, Sujan as well from NACSA, and Sam, who is our senior tech lead. So the first part is really Field Tasking Manager. Maybe the first time that you hear about the Field Tasking Manager, or maybe you've already know or used it. We actually did last year was a more detailed webinar where we talked through the developments of the Field Tasking Manager, and a lot has happened since then, which we'll focus on and which we're really excited because all the progress is really focusing on the user experience, and all of you, whether you are a mapper or a project manager joining this session. So where does field mapping fit? As you probably know, we focus on building a lot of different tools on what we call the kind of whole open mapping solution, or from start to end. Maybe you joined some previous webinars we did on open mapping solutions where we briefly talked about all the different tools that we focus on in order to allow everyone from imagery all the way to adding information, remote mapping, AI-assisted mapping. But today, this focus in red is really focusing on field mapping. So adding this local knowledge to the map and doing that through using the Field Tasking Manager. What is the Field Tasking Manager? What is really unique and what is different that we focus in field data collection is the coordination. So there aren't other tools that allow this coordination and splitting of tasks. And you hear also through some of the use cases we'll talk about the efficiency of it, the quality of the data, and also the accessibility in being able to use the tools. Next few slides, I'll hand over to Sam. You'll hear from a few of us that I've just mentioned to what really makes a good field mapping app, a good field mapping application, and what are the things we've focused on and you'll see in this webinar. So over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Petya. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Yep, nice. All right. So yeah, FieldTM has been through a couple of different iterations now. We're at quite a good point, I think, where we've gathered lots of feedback from users in the field. We've had a few different mapping campaigns that have been quite formative for FieldTM's recent developments. So as part of the process, we've obviously assessed what is currently available as well, and then try to take user requirements and develop something that matches the requirements of what people need. So the first thing that so next slide, please. Sorry. The first thing that I think it makes a great field mapping app is the progress tracking. So something in the early stages of FieldTM that we had, or didn't have, I should say, was any form of good progress tracking to show when features had been mapped and when they were validated, when they were marked bad, and so on. Now what we have is actually immediately features turn green or turn yellow or turn red, depending on their progress in the mapping flow. Next slide, please. So tied into that, a key thing to have in the field, when you're mapping with lots of different colleagues, all in one area, is ideally you want real-time updates. It's really not very convenient to have to refresh the page, and maybe miss that somebody's already mapped something that you're currently mapping, and you don't really know where people are. So it's a really great thing to have, actual real-time updates that just happen on your screen immediately. You can see when someone next to you is blocking a task area or mapping a building or complete the building. So that's number one. And we've ticked off both of those in December 2024 with a pretty major release that we made. In the same release, we also added great capabilities for geolocation, loading of base maps. So from high resolution satellite imagery or drone imagery, we can generate offline and online base maps that can be used to help users navigate in the field. And we also have basic navigation capabilities as well. So the user can click on, for example, a building and click to navigate. Ideally, the screen will tilt slightly and show a simple navigation route, like similar to tools that we know and use, like OSM and or Google Maps and so on. And then the final point here. Next slide, please. Next is the offline support. So something that we haven't had until now. As you can see, this is just a May 2025 update, so it's very recent. Is fully offline mapping support. So previously we had the capability of coordinating via FieldTM that needed to be online, and then doing some of the mapping using the offline ODK Collect application. Now we have a fully integrated application where the mapping is all done in FieldTM and everything works offline. So as long as you have loaded up FieldTM as an application while you were in the office, then things should be cached and everything synced to map as you need when you're offline and then send when you come back online. So yeah, that's it from me from those slides. I think that just to add to that, there's just a couple of extra resources I think that were just linked there on the previous page. So we have an FAQ, we have a documentation site that kind of goes into more details for all of these, and information about our technical decision making as well, if of interest. So I think I'm passing back to Petra.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sam. So if you've not used FieldTM, maybe those are new things, but you can really think of these important features, especially I think the offline was something that came so much from users. So you see some of these features. I think the latest one that I think is also really exciting and it was really coming from a lot of the users before is about web forms, right? Having that intuitive user interface for everyone to being able to map easily. So before you had to kind of move between two applications. So that's also really, really exciting development. And now I'll hand over to Sujan so you can hear a bit more before you see all the kind of demos and the things that we'll share. So Sujan, who is working with in the developer team at Naxa, we're partnering with in developing the field tasking manager. So Sujan, over to you to explain a bit to people that did these workflows that you see one of them in a bit, but you'll hear a bit more now from Sujan.
Okay, thank you, Petya. So hi everyone. I have been working as a backend developer for FMTM. So I'll just briefly explain about the workflows that we have currently in FieldTM. So before jumping into workflows, I'll like to explain about the user management, user roles that are currently implemented in our field TM. So there will be different role categories like super admins will have every access to the system, and then we will have organization admin who will be the one focal person that will create organization, and he has access to invite other people like a project manager and invite other admins. So an organization admin will be able to create project after his organization is approved. So he will create project, then he will invite the project admin to complete further project information, to complete the project description of project, and so on. So that will allow project managers to complete other extra work that will be needed to complete the project. And after that, there will be two roles, which are mapper and validators. So there are actually two sections in the field TM. One section is completely mapper workflow, where mapper will log in and collect data, whereas the another section will be more focused on project management, or there will be validation and management of project, tracking user progress and progress of project. So once a user logs in using their mobile device, they will be redirected to Mapper page, where they will have option to log in via OSM account or by using Google account. So once they are logged in, they will be using their own project where they have been assigned. So once they once they go inside the project, they will be able to collect data. So there will be two platform to collect the data currently. So if the project is created and they want to use OTK Collect to collect the data, then they can just scan the QR code and fill up the form to complete the survey. If they want to use web form, then they can specify they want to use web form in their project. So once the project is made for the web form, they will be able to use the web form to collect the data directly on web, so they don't have to switch between the apps like from field TM to OTK Collect. That will make easier to complete the workflow and collect the data. So once the user collects the data, the whole task will be marked as mapped. So once the task is mapped, validator will monitor the progress of data. So they will check each submission and ensure that data are complete, accurate, and free from error. If any incompleteness or inaccurate data is found, they will then mark that feature as bad and communicate with mappers to have the rework on that particular feature, so that mapper can visit again uh, to that feature and recollect the data. So once all the features inside the tags is marked as validated, so let's say all the features are good and all the service survey collected data are good, then they will be marked as validated. So if the entire tags inside the project will be validated, then the project will be marked as completed, and it will be marked as read only, so that user can view the data but cannot contribute further. So and the project manager is the focal person to manage the project, like creating a project that has been left out by the organization admin, and they can invite the validators by using email or just sending the link to the user, so they can have access to provide mappers. They have access to assign mappers in a specific project. So the accessible person will be able to collect data and view data, so like that. So mapper project manager will be the main person to track the progress of project, manage the project like editing forms and tracking this validators work, and the progress of the entire task and entire workflow of the project. So that will be the three workflows.
Thank you so much.
And further on, so the
Yeah.
ongoing use cases will be further discussed. So I would like to hand over to Petya again.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Sujan. So Sujan was explaining that at a high level. We'll also pre-record it, and after this webinar, we'll share short demos for each one of the how to create an organization project and the mapper you hear from Sam. Before we move into the demo in this next section, I really, what we want to talk about and is hear some of the user stories, right? So there's all these features of the Field TM. But what we want to briefly share with you is some of the stories of the people who are in organizations already using the Field TM. And I really want you all to think of, okay, what are projects or maybe activities that you will see, or you might see a use of the Field TM, because we really want to hear from you. So hopefully that would also be something quite exciting for you to hear. We'll hear 3 examples. There are actually more, but there are different users for the Field TM. So maybe you see yourself in one of those categories. I will talk a lot around partner organizations, like also local governments, specific field mapping teams that do these organizing efforts, OpenStreetMap community. So there are different users, and yeah, we really want to hear from you in your cases, especially after this webinar. So first, in the next 2-3 minutes, we actually hear from Manjita with a project that was happening, I think last week also, there was more work being undertaken. So you'll hear from this example of the use of Field TM in making urban development easier in Toka municipality in Nepal. So Manjita, over to you. Yeah, we have another 5-7 minutes and then we move into the demo.
Well, thanks, Betya. Hello, everyone. I'm Manjita from Nepal, and currently on the development team as a project manager from Naksha. So we currently ran out the field mapping activities on the local government level, that is municipality level, on the Toka municipality. So around 55 enumerators were hired and provided 2 days training on how to fill up data and how to set up the how to see the visualize the project and how to set up the project and collect the data. It contained both about the questionnaires, the format, as well as the FMTM Field TM workflow. So after the training, they are deployed on the field for around one month to collect the data of around 21,000 households in the whole municipality. So, Peter, can you change the slide, please? Yeah. So the aim of that data collection was majorly the house numbering of the Toka municipality based on the metric system, as well as the municipality wanted to build the integrated database management for which the Field TM helped them in the coordination and management part to see how the data collection process is progressing, and to help them track the progress nicely, and as well as the best part, the project manager and validator told about the validation. So if the data is incorrect, they could invalidate, and the field manager could the field mappers could still go on the field and collect the data again. So the interactive UI made them easier to collect the data as well as collect the data as well as see the remaining portion of their task, and help project manager in progress tracking, data management, and validation. So currently the Toka is in the end and expected to finish the field mapping activity by this week. And yeah, so and another field mapping activities had started last week on this about the similar use case is similar on the house numbering and integrated database management, but on the different municipality with 400 enumerators this time, and expected to 400 innovators are expected to collect the data, and the project is expected to complete within 10 days or so. So yeah, the training was really a nice experience, and the people, managers as well as mappers were finding using FieldTM more effective and reliable in field. Yeah, back to
Thank you
Vidya.
so much, Manjita. And I know we're also writing, I think there'll be a blog as well coming with more
Yeah.
about this example. So you can also share with people. But I think also it's really exciting is like thinking of these use cases and also kind of hearing from one, like the Toka municipality, and then having the other municipality kind of get in touch. And I think that's exciting of seeing already the impact and like what's possible. So yeah, that's one story from Nepal. There are a few other projects as well. We won't be able to present them all. There's a bit of text on this slide, but I think I just wanted to share it because it's really exciting. I was on a call with the team that's now in Freetown in Sierra Leone with, so this is a project with Slum Dwellers International, Know Your City project. And actually they're doing this now as we speak. That's why they weren't able to join. The pilot started in May, and you can see actually in this screenshot that, it's from yesterday, 27th of May. Here you can see a different use case as well of mapping informal settlements and making that data available via OSM. And in conversations with them, I think the big kind of, use case and what they were saying is having they have the organizations working with them, the local knowledge and the people, but it's having the accessible tools. So what they were speaking specifically with FieldTM is this low cost open technology that provides the high quality data. And I think that's what Manjita also spoke about. So more to follow on this one. I think they'll share more stories because this is literally FieldTM is being used as we speak. And yeah, one of the examples here is, mapping of buildings of what they were saying, which is also used for assessing like climate vulnerability. So there are different use cases in here. And hopefully that makes you think of like the use cases that you will be using the field tasking manager going forward. I'll briefly run through this again with Slum Dwellers International. Just wanted to show you as well some screenshots of areas in Ghana. So this was a project that happened last year. And some of the insights here is also the number of structures that are being mapped and then included into the field tasking manager. This is another example of a project happening in Ghana where FieldTM is being used. We also have a collaboration with the use of FieldTM in Brazil, and we're hoping that there'll be more after this webinar. So I won't take more time speaking, and I'll hand over to Sam so that all of you can follow along and see how you can use FieldTM. I will also save any questions. Feel free to add in the chat. We'll have time at the end, but if anything burning, add to the chat and we'll answer afterwards. So over to you, Sam, for the demo, and I can share links as well.
Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, nice. Right, so live demos are always fun. I think before I jump into it, I will just briefly talk about why you might want to use FieldTM. I know like we've covered many good case studies and so on, but there are quite a few other field mapping tools out there. And I think this is quite an important point that people often raise, like, why do we need another tool? I think that one of the key things that Petja mentioned is like we're really focused on the coordination of multiple different mappers. But the other thing is just about ease of use. Many mappers don't have very much prior mapping experience. They need a reasonably easy and intuitive UI to just be able to map very simply. So as a example here, like one of my favorite field mapping tools outside of FieldTM is QField. QField is very much a tool where you could imagine every user is kind of the project manager, right? You need a bit of GIS experience, ideally, like know how to use QGIS. It has many of the boxes ticked, like it works offline. It has like basic collaboration capabilities. At least you can map in teams. But you need a bit of prior experience, right? So the whole idea here is that hopefully FieldTM is pretty easy to use and pick up. So on the left here, I have the mapping part of FieldTM loaded up on my laptop. I also have a screen share of my mobile phone on the right, which you can see me moving about here. And what I would have liked to show here is actually the real-time capabilities that were mentioned, where updating on one device will immediately display on the other device. As with all live demos, it was actually my fault here. I broke something just prior to this demo that will be fixed not long after, for when you're using it. But anyway, we are where we are, and I can do a manual sync to still show all the same capabilities. So I'll move to my phone. So on the right-hand side here, you can see we have the basic UI layout is map first. The project manager has created the project in this instance. So all the user has to do is just load up the project. So the project manager either sends them a link via WhatsApp, or they could receive an email notification to say that it's been created. Perhaps a task was assigned to the user, and so on. So this is the project area somewhere in Kathmandu. You can see a couple of locked tasks that are being mapped in this demo as we speak. Just a small note on the UI. On the left, we have like the ability to rotate the screen as possible, obviously, like with any map. You can also geolocate at the top left. I won't click that because I'm currently not in Kathmandu. But then you should see just a blue dot on the screen of where you are, as we all know and expect from any mapping application on your phone. So we have this button to reorient the screen and then to go full screen as well. At the bottom right, we have the capability to switch base layer. So, for example, you might want to switch to just Esri satellite imagery here. We have found different users have different use cases and, find different base layers easier. Obviously, this is quite a low resolution, just free satellite imagery that's available. The whole idea with what we've called like our end-to-end mapping flow, where we have other tools that fit in the sphere here, like Drone Tasking Manager, would be that you actually in advance generate some high resolution imagery that you might then want to use in FieldTM. So then the project manager could then load that into the project when it was created, and the user would very easily have this accessible as an extra option. So they would have their high resolution drone imagery, for example. But I'll just switch back to OpenStreetMap. One nice thing actually of using this layer is that you obviously have the OpenStreetMap buildings and features underneath. Sometimes the data extract or the features that you loaded in before may be missing a few features from the most recent OpenStreetMap data. So this is actually quite a nice thing we've noticed for users in the field. If they see that a building is, for example, this building here is present in the base layer, but is not actually present in the data, they could add a new building right there to the data set very easily. So there's pros and cons, right, of each base layer type. We also just have a legend at the bottom right to show you the color scheme of features. So the features actually appear when you click on a task area. They should display with a color based on. So I think my internet's just being a bit slow, so they're not actually displaying, which is a bit of a pain. But yeah, I might just refresh that. Let's click on the left screen. So I'm back onto the laptop screen here. You can actually see it. I probably just need to just refresh my phone quickly. But these are all of the buildings, right, in this task area. So you can actually see based on the legend, there's been one mapped building here, which is green. We click on a a building, we can see the status. So this was survey submitted, and these other features are yet to be mapped. Okay, so I talked about, an intuitive UI, easy to use. Like there's all of these extra functionalities, but the main thing that people really want to do is just, load up the map, zoom in, click on a task, and then map it. I'm actually just gonna reopen this. I think I've had it open for quite a long time now. Okay, so let's click on this task area. And here, you click on the arrow, you start mapping, and then you click on the feature you want to map. Previously in FieldTM, if you joined the previous webinar, this is when things get a bit more complicated. You have to load a QR code into ODK Collect and map in ODK Collect and come back to FieldTM. Now we have web forms. We just need to click this Collect Data button at the bottom. And this has loaded the form just directly in the web browser. So this is the just standard buildings form that we use for building data collection that maps to OpenStreetMap tags. Only one of these, only this question here is actually mandatory, all of the rest are optional. So just to save time, I'm going to skip all of these questions. Go to the next step. By default, we have this question. You can disable these additional questions, but we have this verification question for existing features, that you're mapping, say the building's on the map and you're adding this data. You want to verify, like, is the location of where it was said it was on the map actually the right place in the field? It may be in the wrong place. It may be many buildings that were mapped as one, or it may be one building that was actually mapped as many. There could be these different things. So you can say what was wrong with the digitization, or you can just say, yes, the digitization is fine. This is where you can add a photo. I'll just take a photo of my desk here. And then you submit the web form. So just as I've added the photo there, but I'll just do that flow again just to kind of demonstrate. So just very quickly, the simplest version of this would be load the UI, click the building, collect data, fill it out, and then submit. So the whole process is a lot quicker, and you don't have to keep swapping between applications. As I said, this real-time sync thing is not there, so this is not ideal to actually view this happening. But the one thing we can do is just sync manually. There's always a backup option that's available. So you're in the field and your connectivity drops. You can just refresh as and when to make sure you have the most up-to-date data from the server. So you can see, as a consequence of me doing that, it actually updated my it did do the real-time sync to my mobile phone, which I guess is quite nice. So so we have a yellow building here. This was the one that I didn't actually complete the survey. I quit just as I uploaded the photo, and the survey is technically still open. So in the legend, it's opened in ODK. Okay. Additional functionality. So we have these three. Actually, hold on. Before I talk about the tabs at the bottom, I'll actually talk about the sign in. Maybe I should have mentioned that at the start, but you can see at the top, there's this button to sign in. On the left screen here, I'm already signed in as my OpenStreetMap user, but on the right screen on my phone, I'm not currently signed in. So I think Sujan mentioned this earlier. There's the option to sign in via OpenStreetMap. We also have the option to sign in via Google. There is another option to just not sign in whatsoever. That's also a valid way. If you want to reduce the burden of having to sign users up to different services, say you're mapping with 400 mappers, like in Suryodaya in Nepal that Manjita mentioned, mappers just want to get started, right? So all they need to do is just load the page, start mapping, The only downside of that is that the mappers won't be credited for their mapping. So the advantage of logging in is that, say you log into OpenStreetMap, you may want to get the credits for your mapping for your OpenStreetMap user. Or logging in via Google, there may be use cases where users are rewarded based on how many features they get to map in the day. So we need to be able to accurately track how many features each user mapped, and then they get remunerated based on that. So I won't log in on the phone, but you can see I'm logged in on the desktop. We do also have the capability of changing the language. This was recently added too. We have quite a big mapping project going on in Brazil, so we have full translation of the UI into Brazilian Portuguese, and obviously having the excellent Nepali skills from all of the development team and project managers in Nepal, we of course have a Nepali translation of everything as well. This is all open source, like available online. Anyone can contribute a translation to FieldTM in their own language. So we definitely do welcome contributions of that sort. There's even a button in the sidebar here to see help us translate, and there'll be details as you click through there. So the last thing I'll talk about here is just these extra tabs. So this is the main mapping tab, obviously. There is this offline tab. That's a reasonably new functionality. So FieldTM can work fully online, right? With the real-time sync and all of the advantages of being online. But many cases you have intermittent or maybe no connectivity at all in the field. In those cases, any submission made will just be cached offline. And then when the user comes back online, say they come back to HQ, the submissions will be sent automatically when they return to the application. In order to facilitate like a fully offline mapping workflow, we do a lot of caching in the background of all of the UI so that everything should work as needed. One of the things is the features need to be saved offline. So like the buildings or the features that you're mapping. So there's this tab here to manually download those and store them offline. They do by default store anyway. So as you can see here, it says the features are already stored offline, but just in case they're not, you can check this tab. Base maps as well. When I mentioned the project manager may in advance create a base map that users can either download offline or just view online for their high resolution satellite imagery. This is the page where you will be able to see all of the options for base maps that the project manager may have made available. So if we go back to the third tab here, these are a few more detailed tabs to step into. The project manager may have created mapping instructions, for example, that they would like the user to review while they're mapping. So we can use Markdown format here to embed images, even potentially videos and like any other content you want into a nice set of instructions for the user. We just have basic project information details, obviously. And then two things that won't really show very well on here because there's not actually any mapping going on really. But you can have comments on tasks and on features. So if a validator, for example, was checking real time as the submissions came in, they may see that there's an issue with a submission, submit a comment, and the user should be able to view comments in this section. We do also have the functionality of tagging. So the validator could even tag the mapper that needs to fix the issue. And as part of the real time, if the user's online kind of capabilities, they should see a notification immediately on their screen to say like, this validator tagged you, there's an issue with this feature. And the only other thing here is just the mapping activities that get saved here. So this is like a mapping log, basically, that the users can view. So that's most of the capability of like the mapper UI as such. Like I said, hopefully it's reasonably intuitive, easy to use. The key thing here is the web forms functionality that is simply enabled, or the default enabled functionality that you can use just with this collect data button. I will note as well that it is possible to use the ODK collect based workflow, the older workflow, if that is preferred. People already have experience, for example, with ODK collect and really want to use that. It is an option during project creation. But yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything that I want to show. So definitely open to questions, and yeah, feel free to put them in the chat, or I'll hand back to Petya, I guess, and we can go from there. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Yeah, I'll open to questions. We shared both projects, and it would be great if people try already. I think we can see some lock tasks. So any questions? I have just one more slide about next steps and how you can reach out to us. But let's open up for questions, because I hope you all clicked already, and I'll give you a few seconds. I had one question, Sam, about when you have a building that's in between the tasks, like how are those decisions made of like who is going to, or you can already see if it's green or not. So maybe just kicking with that.
Yep.
And if anyone has questions, raise your hand. We'd love to hear from some of you, or type in the chat.
Yep. So that's a good question, Petya. So the buildings are placed within a task area based on, in the like kind of geometry, you could say, there's something called the centroid of the polygon. So if you are mapping polygon features, the centroid, for example, of say this square would be right in the center. So because the centroid point is within this task area, this is where it's located. So say you had a really funny shaped polygon that was like a load of zigzags. It may actually fall partly within this task, but the centroid falls within another task. And that's how we determine, basically. So all this to say, there is no way for a feature to fall within two task areas. It can only fall within discretely within a specific task area. And yeah, that's how we subdivide.
Thank you, Sam. That makes sense. Okay, I think I'm just going to read out. So one was from Sam, which is a good question. I think we should reiterate about, is there risk of the data being added to OSM? So maybe elaborating on that again, Sam, and then I'll read the other two. I think we have one question from Michael, and then a few more coming up.
Okay, I'll answer that question, and then I'll also just dive into a misfit of functionality that I forgot to show as well about adding new features to the map. But yeah, about the question for the risk of uploading, data to OpenStreetMap. So I've talked a bit about the OpenStreetMap workflow here. One thing that we don't really actually have nailed down is the pushing of data to OpenStreetMap at the moment. So there's two workflows here, right? There's the custom kind of, outside of OpenStreetMap, might be government data collection, whatever, that kind of workflow. And then there's the OpenStreetMap workflow. We do have lots of helpers for OpenStreetMap workflows where we map the questions to specific OpenStreetMap tags and so on. And you can extract that data as, say, a GeoJSON or as OSM XML, any format, but we don't provide the capabilities yet of pushing that directly to OpenStreetMap. And that's because of this very question raised, that it's actually quite a complex thing to do. You have to do merging, essentially, of the data that you have with what's in OpenStreetMap and reconcile the differences. So this is something that we worked on partly for a while, and then we got sidetracked onto doing this mapper workflow. But it's something in the roadmap that is definitely coming. This automatic kind of reconciling and pushing to OpenStreetMap, with all of the things concerned there. But just before I answer more questions, I'll just show as well. So this is actually a workflow where I'm just mapping existing geometries, obviously. We do even have some workflows, like I mentioned, this mapping project in Brazil, where they don't actually want to map any existing geometries. They want to map entirely new features, and they only want to map point geometries. So as part of the project creation configuration, you can specify what type of new features you want to collect, whether they're just like single geopoints or polygon features. In this case, the project is set up so that the user has to draw polygons, which may or may not be what you want, in the field. But I can show you here. I just clicked it, but yeah, you can click map new feature, and then you should be able to, well, that's a pretty crappy polygon, but you get the idea. And that should be mapped and ready to, there you go, that's better. Ready to map. Then you click proceed. It should take you straight to the web form, just to map that new feature. So this is something that we're actually working on removing, because the feature obviously does exist when you just created it. But then you should come straight to this screen and fill out your survey as intended. So FieldTM has the capabilities of mapping either only existing features, a mix of existing features, and then filling in the gaps with like occasional new features, or even creating projects that are just to map entirely new features. So you can cover all three use cases there. Go ahead, Petra, with questions.
Just reading, yeah. So I think they're kind of connected on answer some. So Mike was also asking about, can it work with lines, roads? I don't know if that relates to mapping what you were just talking about. So that's one.
Yep. No, definitely. So yeah, this is all during the project creation step. You can decide what type of geometries you're collecting is one selection. And the second selection is what type of new geometries do you wish to collect? So there's a slight distinction there in that you might have a data set of buildings. Like in this case, we just have polygon buildings, and we want to collect polygons for existing features. But then when the user collects new geometries, as I mentioned, this functionality of mapping a new feature, you might want them to actually, trace around the building and, draw the proper polygon in the field, or you may want them to draw just a single point. So the same applies for roads. You can map roads and rivers, or you can actually draw new roads and rivers. I wouldn't say that would be an easy thing to do necessarily, drawing new roads in the field, maybe small minor roads, but it is possible. And just as I end the question, you can see actually here the real-time capability. Sorry, the real-time capability does work for some of the things that I haven't broken everything. Here you can see when I actually create this new polygon here, if you keep an eye on the right-hand side on my mobile screen, I click proceed, this creates the geometry, opens the web form for mapping. You can see this immediately gets created on another user's device, right? So users will also see real time as new features are added.
Exciting. I think we have two others. And again, if anyone wants to add more, thank you, Manjita, for maybe explaining a bit more, Sam, about ODK Collect and web forms and maybe how web forms work. And I wonder if that's also part of one of the demo workflows we'll showcase later on like the project manager and like how that works.
Yep. So yeah, we have a very good relationship with ODK. We really base a lot of the actual mapping, like the survey data collection, on ODK existing tools. They're like rock solid, really nice toolkit that they produce. So ODK has been developing the ODK Collect Android application for quite a long time now. And that was the primary way to collect data in the field. In the past, say 6 months to a year, they've created a new project called Web Forms, which has moved from prototype to, you could say, roughly a beta now. So it's very, that's putting it lightly though, like it is very feature rich. It's got lots of the capability that we need. And the difference being here, ODK Collect is an Android application, as I mentioned, so you can't use it on iOS, for example. It also has one specific use case, right? It's for collecting data, survey data. Web forms are much more versatile, right? They're available in the web, meaning any user with web capabilities, say a web browser on their desktop, on a mobile phone, iOS, Android, wherever, they can use web forms. You can also use web forms to potentially create forms, demo them and test them. You can do various things with them. So what we've done is taken that functionality and embedded it into our existing web application. So like I mentioned before, this stops us having to switch between an Android application back to a web application and back and forth. Now it's just entirely one single web application with everything that we need.
Thank you, Sam. And yeah, Michael, if you have more questions and you have an idea of creating, forums, please reach out. I think we have two really good follow other questions. So Antonio is about indigenous communities in Para, I can't pronounce that very well, if I understand, is in Brazil, who need to map their communities and only have smartphones. I think there's definitely a use case. I was also thinking of maybe we'll share emails as well of, talking a bit about the project that's also happening in Brazil with the user-filled tasking manager. But the answer is definitely yes. So really happy, I think, Antonio, we can get in touch with us and elaborate more on what data needs to be collected. But I'm trying to think of who else is in the webinar, because I know from our Latin American Caribbean hub, there'll probably be more use cases as well.
Well, on that note, I mentioned obviously we have the Brazilian Portuguese translations already in place and already vetted by the team in Brazil, part of a government team that we're working with there. So we're going to be using FieldTM in very near future, couple of weeks to a month, to start mapping informal settlements all throughout Brazil. So quite a big user base there.
Thank you so much. I'll share emails in a bit, but I'd love to hear more because I think it's a use case. And I think we have a great question that I'll actually maybe turn also to Manjita as well and others on the challenges right now, because I know there were a lot of challenges that we've addressed, some of them, right, with web forums and the offline. What else, maybe Manjita, from the most recent experience?
Okay. So in my perspective, so the greatest challenge we have been facing right now is FM FieldTM is not being supported on low spec devices that has really old Android version, or maybe having RAM that is less than 4 GB, and such devices are not FMTM is not handled on such device to work smoothly until now due to the package we are using. So that can cause the problem to some of the users that we have been facing as a challenge for now. And we are still discovering the options they can use in those cases. And but yeah, that is the struggle for both the mappers and project managers as well as the facilitators on the mapping activities. Otherwise, not so much of the things that we faced, there were some minor issues that are mostly related to mostly fixable, that has been fixed within the scheduled time. So yeah, the project we're running in smoothly and we are happy on that.
I don't know, Sam, if you have more. I would also say that one feedback is the more it's being used, the more feedback we'll have. And I know there were big challenges that have happened already, fixes, but it's through the use that's the kind of iteration and improvement happens, which is also one of the big things. But yeah, Sam, anything else?
Definitely. Yeah, and in these really big mapping campaigns where there's hundreds of users, there's really good edge cases that we can work out, where there's just someone with specific settings on their phone or something that we need to try to work with and so on. So thank you for raising that point though, Manjita, that so this is something that's a very new issue as a result of the quick development to get the offline support out. We've had to use a few tools that are quite resource intensive, you could say. So I think the rough stats were out of about 90 people in a training session, about 20 users had devices that couldn't use FieldTM in its current iteration. But this is something that was only introduced like a technical problem in the past couple of weeks. And every technical problem has a technical solution, is something that we can definitely work on. and optimize. So yeah, this is something that we just haven't really dug down into yet, but it's definitely something that we're looking at addressing, as a priority. So that uses on basic devices, ideally from say the past 6 to 7 years is what I want to say. Like anything older than that is very difficult to support. You start getting really old versions of Android or iOS, but yeah, we want to support as many devices as we possibly can. So that's on the roadmap. And I'll also just note as well, there may even be a workaround here. I mentioned that we can reuse the ODK collect based workflow. We could even potentially make projects configurable where we know users may have low spec devices. We can potentially remove all of this extra complexity for the offline support in FieldTM. The perfect case is when users have low spec devices, but then they have internet capability, which I guess is maybe wishful thinking, but that's a good intersection where we could easily solve that. But there may be ways around this, is all I'm saying. So,
no, thank you, Sam. But yeah, Francisco, I hope that it answers. I really think this webinar is also, there were some really big challenges, I think, that were coming from users that now have been implemented. So I think we are yet to hear, I think, from more users with kind of the latest feedback. So I'd really encourage you all to try it. I know we're nearly up to time, so I just switched now back to the last slide. I think we have people joining us in the last minute, but a lot of links here. So I really, want to thank all of you who joined and who maybe clicked already and tried with the FieldTM. I'll share here a link to a feedback form. So you can also share ideas about future webinars, what you found helpful as we plan going ahead. You have the links for the Field Tasking Manager GitHub in case we have any contributors, anyone working in open source you'd like to help. We have Slack as the community and different working groups to keep in touch with all of you who joined. And I know there are many people who registered and couldn't make it. We will be sharing the recording, but also Sam did very short demos for each of the workflows, the mapper, how you create an organization and a project that you can watch. And my main call for all of you is if you have a project, I think, Antonio, I'd love to hear back from you, maybe what you mentioned about Indigenous communities. And yeah, I think I would always say that technology improves only by being used and hearing from all the users. So excited to hear more from you. Don't have more to add. Any burning questions? Otherwise, we'll stop here. And I'd love to have your feedback if you share feedback via the form or any of our emails. Really happy to plan more sessions or get in touch with us directly. And huge thanks, to Sam and Manjita and Sujan for presenting, but also for all the work that makes this possible on the development side. Not, this will be brilliant finishing on time for all of you to either continue trying it out, maybe go and click on the link and try the FieldTM. I would really encourage you to do that and ask any questions. Enjoy the rest of your day if no more questions, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.